Willkommen beim MyGroove Podcast mit mir, Martin Grubinger.
Und mit mir, Florian Obkircher.
MyGroove ist unsere App, mit der du spielerisch dein Lieblingsinstrument entdecken kannst. Profis und Stars der Musikszene bringen dir Songs bei. Schritt für Schritt, Level für Level. Und am Ende spielst du die Songs dann mit deiner MyGroove All-Star Band auf deinem Device.
Im MyGroove Podcast stellen wir dir die Stars der App genauer vor. Wir fragen sie, wie sie ihre Musikleidenschaft entdeckt haben und was ihr Instrument einzigartig macht. Sie geben dir Tipps, mit denen du schnell besser wirst,
damit du bald die Bühne rockst wie der Typ im Hintergrund. Burn it!
Bereit, Martin?
Bereit, los geht's, Florian. Count it in.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hallo, liebe Hörerinnen und Hörer. Wie schön, dass wir eine neue Folge unseres MyGroove Podcast aufnehmen können. Hier bei uns im MyGroove Studio in Neukirchen im schönen, wunderschönen Salzkammergut. Und unser heutiger Gast ist ein echter Superstar. Also ich bin heute nicht nur als Co-Host neben dem großartigen Florian Obkircher gleich da, sondern eben auch als Fan. Denn bei uns im Studio ist Mr. Hyung-Ki Joo. Er ist Engländer, lebt aber in Wien. Florian, let's go.
Hallo Martin, hallo liebe Hörerinnen und Hörer. Ich muss jetzt zugeben, dass ich als Kunstbanause ihn gar nicht gekannt habe, bevor du mir von ihm erzählt hast. Und ich muss sagen, mir ist da etwas entgangen, weil Hyung-Ki Joo, er ist nicht nur ein genialer Pianist, er ist auch extrem cool und witzig. Er ist ein Typ, der es schafft, die oft so starre und ernste klassische Musik auf humoristische Weise einem neuen und breiten Publikum zugänglich zu machen. Die Los Angeles Times zum Beispiel hat ihn und seinen musikalischen Partner Alexei Igudesman gar als die Könige der klassischen Music Comedy bezeichnet. Vielleicht zur Erklärung, ihre Shows, die fühlen sich ein bisschen wie Stand-up-Comedy an. Da gibt's geniale Sketches, da gibt's theatralische Momente und Lachnummern, gepaart mit der Musik von Mozart und Beethoven. Vorgetragen werden diese Witze aber in diesem Fall von zwei virtuosen Musikern, die zu den weltweit Besten ihres Fachs zählen. Dementsprechend funktionieren ihre Shows auch in renommiertesten klassischen Konzertsälen wie der Carnegie Hall, genauso wie in Stadien mit mehr als 18.000 Menschen. Auf YouTube haben die Videos der beiden gar über 50 Millionen Klicks. Hyung-Kis Kompositionen werden von Orchestern wie der New York Philharmonic Orchestra, vom London Philharmonic oder dem Orchester der Komischen Oper Berlin aufgeführt. Und ein weiterer Höhepunkt seiner Karriere, niemand geringerer als der Piano-Man himself, Billy Joel, hat Hyung-Ki als Arrangeur seines klassischen Albums Fantasies Delusions engagiert und das war immerhin 18 Wochen lang auf Platz 1 der US-Klassik-Charts. Und jetzt würde mich interessieren, Martin, wie hast du ihn kennengelernt? Kannst du dich erinnern, wie du Hyung-Ki das erste Mal begegnet bist oder auf seine Musik aufmerksam geworden bist?
Ja, ich erinnere mich gut und ich glaube, er selbst, das wir ihn dann jetzt gleich fragen können, erinnert sich vielleicht nicht mehr, aber unsere erste Begegnung war ein Telefonat. Er hat mich angerufen und manchmal jetzt, wenn ich die beiden sehe, was für eine Weltkarriere das ist, denke ich, hätte ich damals bei diesem Anruf Ja gesagt, wäre ich vielleicht Part of the Trio geworden mit Yehudi Menuhin und Grubinger. Denn er hat mich angerufen und gefragt, hey man, do you also play the drum kit? Er wusste natürlich, dass ich klassischer Schlagzeuger bin, aber das mit dem Drum Kit, das wollte er auschecken. Ich glaube, hätte ich damals in diesem Telefonat mehr Enthusiasmus gezeigt und sofort Ja, ich will gerufen, dann wäre ich vielleicht Part dieses Wahnsinnserfolgs geworden. So ist mein Weg in eine andere Richtung gegangen, der ist auch okay, aber das war unsere erste Begegnung. Weißt du was, Flo? Ich wäre total curious, wäre total neugierig drauf, ob er sich an dieses Telefonat noch erinnert.
Ja, aber wunderbar, dann holen wir ihn doch quasi ins Gespräch. Lass ihn uns doch als Gast begrüßen. Für die Hörerinnen und Hörer vielleicht ganz kurz zur Erklärung. Hyung-Ki spricht zwar Deutsch, aber weil wir wollen, dass er sich bei uns richtig zu Hause fühlt, haben wir beschlossen, das Interview auf Englisch zu führen. In diesem Sinn, Hyung-Ki, welcome to our new podcast.
Thank you very, very much. What an introduction. I think that's possibly the best introduction I've ever had of anything.
I'm blushing. That's very kind.
No, I mean, it's a real honor to be here. I mean, I know everybody says that whenever they're on anything, but Martin's talking about a phone call. My memory of this is actually the phone calls that never happened. That's my memory of how I first met Martin, because I heard about Martin Grubinger from a good friend of mine called Gustav Ortner, who told me, there's this very, very, very talented Austrian drummer, and maybe you should do something with him. And I said, yeah, sure, great. I love doing things with drummers and drums. I'd already done stuff with people like Giorgio Maier, and other classical drummers. So I thought, yeah, sure, why not? I didn't know who he was, and it was at the very, very beginning of his career, so he wasn't the star that he is now. And I had his number, and I called him, and he never picked up. He never answered. Maybe I wrote him an SMS. I said, I'm Hyung-Ki Joo, and I got your number. But, he wasn't interested. I probably should have said, my name is Christina Macarena, and I'm from Guatemala, and I'm 19 years old, and I love the drums. Maybe that would have, but then this guy rocketed and became an incredible superstar, as he deserves to be. And I've been following his career and his projects, and I'm so glad to be even in the same room and in the same sentence as this guy, because what this guy has given to the world through music, you should see his concerts. They're packed with kids, with teenagers, with all kinds of generations, and he's managed to just inspire all kinds of people to music, to classical music, to all kinds of music, to drums, and I can't thank him enough. Actually, we need more people like him.
Hey, thank you so much. But Florian, let's do another try. Let's talk about Hyung-Ki, not about me.
Hyung-Ki, you were born in 1973 in England to Korean parents. And I was wondering, how old were you when you started playing the piano? And also, why the piano in the first place? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. I remember very well. I started relatively late, if I compare myself to a lot of my friends and colleagues. I started at the age of 8.5, which actually sounds young, but a lot of my friends and colleagues started already when they were 3 or 4. And I had the typical sort of Asian stereotypical dinosaur parents, which was like, you must be doctor or you must be lawyer. I'm not promoting a racial stereotype. That's how my dad speaks. So I'm just impersonating my dad. He talks like this. He's like, you must be, and if I would come home from school with a, let's say a maths exam result of 90%, he was like, no, not enough. Must be 99 or 100%. So this was the kind of pressure I had. And it's a miracle that when I actually decided to go to music school, which was a total accident because I was learning piano at 8.5, just with a local teacher. And then 2 years later, she was leaving the country and she thought that I had a lot of talent. And she made plans for me to audition at a school called the Yehudi Menuhin Schule, and summoned my parents and said, I think your son has a lot of talent and I don't want to leave him in bad hands. And I've made an audition for him at the Yehudi Menuhin School. And we were like, who? And I'd never heard of this incredible legend. And to cut a long story short, when I actually got accepted to go to the school, I came back home and my dad said, so you want to be a doctor or you want to be a musician? I said, well, give me 3 days to think about it. And I had a sleepless night. I came back the next day. I was 10 years old. And I said, Daddy, I've decided I want to be a musician. He said, okay, you will be a musician. And I looked back on this time years later and I realized, actually, this is unbelievable. Because first of all, that he would ask a 10-year-old boy what he wants to do. I mean, how many 10-year-olds know what they want to do? And that he would actually ask. And the fact that he listened to me and took my answer totally seriously against his own wishes. Mm-hmm. He wanted me to be a lawyer or a doctor or someone actually useful in this world. And so I kind of spoiled his dreams right there and then. But he's been supportive ever since that moment. And when I went to the Menuhin School, this is a very special school. This is a bit like Harry Potter's Hogwarts. And instead of it being for magicians, it's for musicians. And we were a bunch of like 48 weirdos and nerds all in one place in the countryside. And I realized, oh shit, I'm in the wrong place. I mean, they're going to realize I'm a fake. Because there were people like playing Rachmaninoff concertos and writing operas. There were kids younger than me. I was 10 years old. I mean, my audition piece for the Menuhin School was... I still can't play it. And I'd only played for like 2 years. And there were these geniuses there. You know, there were dictation classes where people would play and they would just write it down perfectly. So I thought, oh shit, they're going to find out I don't belong. I'm going to get kicked out. And I'm not saying this out of modesty. This is really what I felt. And after every summer that I came back, I thought, oh, phew, they didn't realize that I'm not supposed to be here. And there was only one thing that kept me going for the first few years, which is I thought, okay, so maybe I'm not a genius musician. Maybe I'm not as talented as everybody is here, but there's one reason why I believe I should still be here. And maybe they'll see that and let me stay. It's because I believed that I loved music more than anyone else in the world. And I thought, just based on that, you've got to give me a chance here. And I still feel that way. I still feel like there's nobody who loves music more than me.
That's so interesting. Many of us, like when you start a new job, let's say, and you have that sense of like the others are better than me, or you even like have like imposter syndrome, which is like very common these days. And I wonder, like, how do you overcome that? Is it just like this kind of, do you have to persist and remember yourself why you started this thing in the first place, like you did in a sense, or what's your advice to people? Like,
there was a moment when I was like 24 years old or something like that. And I'd be interested, Martin, if he's ever gone through something like this. But I had a moment of, well, it was longer than a moment. I actually thought maybe I should give up because things weren't really working out. And I was still playing this. So, you know, I really thought about giving up. And my teacher at the time, Nina Svetlanova, said to me, okay, so you give up. So what are you going to do? I was like, oh, I don't know. I could do this. I could do that. There's no way you're going to do anything else but music. And I still struggled with that. And but then there was a point when I realized, okay, I am going to play music or be involved in music somehow, no matter what. If things don't work out for me, I will still play music on the streets of Poland or Iceland or whatever, or I'll teach in a music school in northern Finland or whatever. The idea of not having music in my life was just impossible. And that was a great moment of relief, because that's when I realized, okay, of course, would I rather play with someone like Martin Grubinger, who I didn't know existed at the time, but you know, someone like him, would I rather play in Carnegie Hall? Sure. But if that doesn't work out, I'm going to be happy playing on the streets and teaching or whatever, something to do with music. And so then it was clear to me that it didn't matter what happened. Just keep on going. Just try to be better.
How's that for you, Martin?
It's really incredible to listen to it, because, you know, I'm also right now a teacher at the university in Salzburg at Mozarteum. And I mean, at the end, I think the word passion and personal fire is so, so important to us. So do we love what we do? Yes. Do we burn for it? Yes. Are we passionate about music? Yes. Are we passionate about bringing this to our audience, to people, to young people, to kids? Do we try to convince them that music and the arts itself is something special? Yes. And with this passion, with this fire, we can just make progress, because especially after the pandemic, so many kids stopped making music. So many schools didn't go on singing in the school classes. So many people decided not to go to the concert, not to go to the museum, not to go to the theater, not to go to the opera. And at the end, there's just one single key, in my opinion, how we can make progress. It's about passion. And this is what I really love too. As you said, Florian, in the beginning of our podcast, the wonderful thing with Hyung-Ki Joo and Alexei Igudesman, his congenial partner, is that these guys are fantastic musicians performing on a brilliant level. And this is what the whole thing makes this so special, because it's something new, it's something innovative, it's something which really attracts people on many, many different levels. And at the end, it will always work, as you said, on the street, in the school, in the university, on the concert stage, also on some digital platforms being created for the future. And this is why I love to listen to you when you explain why you decided being a musician.
Did you ever think about giving up? Was there a moment of doubt for you?
No,
never.
No, that never, not really. Because, I was kicked out of school when I was 15 after 9 years. Yeah. And as Florian knows, 9 years are obligate. In Austria, everybody has to do 9 years. And the music teacher said to me, you will end under a bridge, my friend.
No way, no way.
Without Matura, it's called Matura in Austria, you will end on the bridge. And I was so strongly motivated. I thought, hey man, I will show you. I will show you what I will be capable of.
Wow.
And at the end, I met him a few weeks ago. It was fun.
Does he remember telling you that you will be nothing?
God.
I remembered him. I don't know if he remembers, but I told him, do you remember what you said when I had my last school day at your school?
And did he remember?
I was not so sure. It was not clear 100%.
I mean, what an honor. I mean, you're in the same league as Einstein, as Schubert, Edison. Because, I mean, these are all people who were told that they will be nothing.
Mm.
Yeah. That's right.
Hyung-Ki, I read there's like also a young violinist that you met there at Menuhin Schule by the name of Alexei Igudesman.
Oh, that guy.
You might have heard the name before. And together as Igudesman and Joo, you started a career that's somewhat unparalleled in classical music, I would say. Like you two do musical comedy shows that like turning classical music into something entertaining. And my favorite sketch from your first show, A Little Nightmare Music, that premiered, by the way, in Austria in the Wiener Musikverein in 2004. It's called Rachmaninoff Had Big Hands, and it's hilarious. Maybe for the listeners, just so I can explain that we all know what we're talking about. Let's set the scene here. Like, you play the piano, and you play this difficult Rachmaninoff piece, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Alexei appears behind you, and he hands you these wooden blocks from behind, and like you're playing, and he hands them to you, and then you put them on the keys, and all of a sudden a chord comes out, and then he gives you another block of wood from behind. It almost turns like into this theatrical circus number. Acrobatic, circus, yeah, exactly. It's incredible, and it doesn't only sound good; it looks good, and it makes you laugh. Can you tell us a bit about that, maybe?
Well, for me, that's the biggest compliment that you say that it still sounds good, because that's something that's always been very important for us. That no matter what kind of fooling around we're doing, actually the music always comes first. As I told you, I always thought that there was nobody who loves music more than me. So I would be going to concerts as a teenager, a lot of those concerts with Alexei too, and who we both passionate about music. And here we are sitting in the concert hall, and we're getting bored or frustrated, or it feels like a funeral. And we're like, this has nothing to do with the joy of making and listening to music. I mean, there's something seriously wrong and ill here. I mean, it's so stuffy, it's so snobby. The audience is snobbish. The performers have this air of elitism. They're looking down on the audience. There's this whole ceremony of walking around in penguin suits and silently just ignoring everyone. I mean, what's this got to do with playing Haydn quartet with joy, or whatever, Beethoven sonata with passion? And so, and I thought, we must have a serious problem if the world of classical music, which I love more than anybody else in the world, I'm the number one fan, and I don't want to be here. There's a serious problem. So And Alexei, of course, shared my feelings. And then we realized, well, maybe we can't change the world, but at least we can create concerts and shows that we would want to go to ourselves. And that was kind of the inspiration for what we do. And although this might be hard for people to believe, we don't really try to be funny, or it was never our intention to go into comedy. It was just to look at the world with a sense of humor. And we, of course, love humor, and we love the theater, and we love theatricality. But it was always about the music first, and it still is. And I think that's why we've enjoyed, to use the word that you use, an unparalleled career, because while there are people who mix music and comedy and classical music and comedy, no one has done it as seriously as us, which is why orchestras like the New York Phil, or musicians like Yuja Wang or Janine Jansen or whoever, do things with us because they realize these guys are not clowns, but they're genuine virtuoso musicians and people who can actually compose, and who are having fun with music, not making fun of music. And this has always been a very important distinction and philosophy for us.
I'm curious, because you mentioned it earlier, Hyung-Ki. How did the classical music world become so serious?
There's a famous letter that Mozart wrote to his father where he started a new concerto and they were applauding like in a rock concert, and then he had to stop and he had to start again. And he wrote to his father and said, I had to stop after 8 bars and start again. Isn't that amazing? He celebrated that. He was so proud that they stopped him, and that because they were so amazed. If you did that today in a classical concert, a lot of performers or composers would be like, shh, you're so stupid, you're so ignorant. I mean, it's like, what a compliment to play a piece and then people love it so much that you have to stop and start again. Famous story of Beethoven's violin concerto. The soloist, the violinist, was doing like magic tricks in between movements with his violin, playing the violin upside down and doing like circus tricks. It's unthinkable today, pretty much, that some soloist would do that. And probably Beethoven hated it. But the point I'm trying to make is that was the tradition, that was the sign of the times. And of course, I love to listen to music seriously and in silence and what have you. But that doesn't mean that you have to force this kind of, you must now listen and be quiet because we are playing serious music. This makes a sort of strangling effect. And there are two big culprits for this. I would say Wagner and Mahler. They're great guys. They wrote some of the most amazing music in the world, no question. And Wagner is one of the most discussed personalities of all time, almost up there with Jesus. So, I mean, not always for the right reasons. He had other reasons that we're talking about him. But, those guys, Wagner and Mahler, really made music and the experience of music much more ceremonial and funeral-like, and we must have super respect and turn the lights down and no coughing and no clapping in between movements, and let's be ultra serioso, which I think got carried away a little bit too far.
That's interesting, because I had a concert last weekend and I played a percussion concerto with orchestra, and as you know, it's a 3 movements piece, and in the first movement it's quite vital, and then so it's virtuosic, it's good to listen, it's cool. But after the first movement, it was silent as it used to be, because people are taught that you are just allowed to applaud at the end. And then there was the second movement. The second movement, it has a motive from Mozart's Magic Flute. Ach, ich fühl's. And we had a quite interesting idea on stage. Let's do it super silent and just let the vibraphone sing this melody in a very, very, very silent interpretation this time. And not after the first and not after the very virtuosic third, but after the very, very touching, I guess, second movement, people started to applaud. And immediately some other people said, shh, 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 shh. And I heard somebody say, seien Sie leise, seien Sie leise. So it means, shut up, shut up. And I was so frustrated because I thought people showed their emotion immediately.
Wow.
They loved what they heard and they were not allowed to show their emotion. And as you said, we need, in a way, I'll say it very radical now, we need a revolution. Something must change very
100%.
quickly and in a very radical way. And maybe the two of us, we're a little bit advocates for it. And if this, what we love, should survive in all facets, we have to change.
Absolutely. Everybody has to change. The presenters, the promoters, the critics, the performers, the audience, the teachers, anybody, the agents, anybody involved in somehow the business of classical music has to change radically.
Before we move on to the next segment, I just have to ask, Hyung-Ki, because one musician who's also known for his humor is Billy Joel, someone you know very well and someone you've worked with in the past. And I just wonder, him coming from songwriting, pop, crossing over to the classical world, and him approaching you to arrange this album for him. Can you tell me how it was working with him, basically being part of this crossover masterpiece?
Just a second before he gives you the answer. I must know, Florian, are you a Billy Joel fan?
Well, I know the hits. and those I like.
Cool.
But
He wrote quite a lot of hits.
But you know what I really liked, Hyung-Ki, when you played Uptown Girl in the Mozart style. And I wonder, can you do this for us since you sit at the...
Oh my God.
So good.
I don't remember, but it's something like that. Yeah. I kind of stole that from Billy. He's always very good at self-deprecating and parodying his stuff, and he's the first to actually admit where he would steal a lot of stuff from in his songs. I mean, there's even a song called "This Night," where the chorus section is Beethoven's Pathétique. I can't sing. This night, it's only you and I. Tomorrow is a long way away. This night will last forever. Which is 100% Beethoven.
Amazing.
And he even credits Beethoven in his album, which doesn't cost him anything because Beethoven was already dead for over 70 years. But, what's interesting about Billy is if you're ever fortunate to be at his home, which I've been lucky many times, the radio is playing constantly. And what is it playing? Beethoven. 99 times out of 100 is just on Beethoven, full stop. So he's a nut. He's a nerd. But not only about Beethoven. I remember, I'll never forget the first time I met him. And not because he was a rock star that I remember. I remember him because I met a guy who was so passionate about classical music. And he was asking all kinds of questions. And he knew stuff about classical music that so many of my peers and colleagues didn't know or had no interest. And here was a rock star asking, hey, why did Tchaikovsky do this? Hey, do you know that thing by Schumann? And what about when Chopin does this? And for hours, he was just so much joy for this. And I realized this guy is not a rock star. He's a classical music nut. And, basically after River of Dreams, he said, okay, I've pretty much said everything I wanted to say in the singer-songwriting world. And now I want to go back to my initial and ever-burning passion, which is classical music. And fortunately for me, he never finished his classical training. So he needed someone to notate, and not just notate, but also help him with translating his ideas into a pianistic cohesion and structural integrity, and making his, I mean, he always had beautiful designs for melody, and he had certain ideas of structure and what he, but because, you know, he didn't have that classical training and didn't do analysis of, you know, Beethoven symphonies, that's something that I could bring to him. And fortunately for me, I made it so difficult that he can't play it. So then I had no choice. He had no choice but to ask me to record it. So I'm actually
so clever.
Very smart.
So clever.
So the very last album that Billy Joel has ever done is actually only me on the album,
Wow.
which is an unusual but very wonderful thing.
I'm a little bit jealous.
Me too, me too. In the next segment, I want to discuss like the instrument of your choice, the piano. We all feel like we know the piano a fair bit, but I guess as someone who has dedicated more than 40 years to that particular instrument, you might be able to tell us a few things we don't know yet. So the segment is called Everything We Always Wanted to Know About the Piano But Were Afraid to Ask. The way it works is Martin and I will ask you a few questions and you just give it a go.
Okay.
Here you go. The first one. What makes the piano more special than any other instrument?
The piano basically can replicate an orchestra. You can actually play pretty much anything on a piano. This is why symphonies and operas have been transcribed and arranged for the piano. You can play pop songs on the piano. You can play anything because it has all the instruments on it. It has all the range.
What's a fun fact about the piano hardly anyone knows?
It was made by men for men.
Oh.
In the perspective of men. In other words, what I mean by that is the keys are very largely spread out, and men tend to have a larger physique than women. And so the piano is actually a lot harder to play for women only because of the metric dimensions. And someone I know has actually recently custom made by Steinway a piano that is thinner and smaller to allow for people with smaller hands to play. And so the piano is a classic invention of genius of male men, but only seen through a very one-dimensional objective.
Interesting. Speaking of the keys, one interesting thing I found about it is like apparently around Mozart's times, the white keys were black and vice versa. Is that true?
Yes, not only were the colors reversed, but there were also all kinds of colors.
Crazy.
I don't know who in the end came up with the white-black division, but I have seen pianos where it's reversed and it's totally crazy. I mean, when you're not used to it, but then you just close your eyes, I guess.
Are there situations in which you hate the piano?
Well, hate is a very strong word. But the one thing that's challenging about being a pianist and let's say being a touring pianist is that you don't really have a choice as to what you will get. I mean, a drummer has to lug around all his drums, a trombone player has to lug around his trombone, and double bass player, but at least it's their own instrument. Whereas you arrive and it's a piano from who knows where, what, how. And who knows who's tuned it, who knows what condition it's being kept in. And your job is to somehow make it sound great. And sometimes that's not so much fun.
Last question for this round. What is the best piano recording of all time?
Wow, that's putting me on the spot. But I would say that if I had to just pick any one person, it would probably be Glenn Gould. Not that everything he does is something I agree with or I think is the right approach. But when Glenn Gould plays, you have, or at least I should speak about myself, whenever Glenn Gould plays, I cannot not listen to him. Even if I don't like what he's doing, I have to just stop and listen. It's that incredible ability to actually, again, what Martin was talking about. He has that power to convince you that you should be engaged in what he's doing. And I know very few people who have that gift.
In the next segment, I'd like to talk about My Groove. And for all the listeners who might not be familiar with the app yet, Martin, would you just give a very brief explanation or tell people what it is?
At the end, we want to revolutionize how people get in touch with music, maybe for the first, second, third, or fourth time. We want people just to have fun and enjoy. Not when parents or teachers say you have to have fun and joy now, but when they have time, when they are flexible, when they feel it's time to make music. And it should be always embedded within a band, an ensemble, with some of the finest artists on earth. So can you imagine, Florian, you sit at home in your living room, you are on your keyboard, on your piano, and Mr. Hyung-Ki Joo sits next to you online, via your iPhone or your iPad, and he explains you exactly what to do. And later on, you will be part of his band online. Some of the best musicians on drums and percussion, singers, e-bass, guitar players will be part of your band. You can make progress within a computer game, a voice and pattern recognition, KE-based, will tell you where you're right, where you're wrong, where maybe you played the wrong note or where you were too fast or the rhythm was not perfect. And at the end, you can always decide which camera angles you want to choose. So, for example, you want to see Hyung-Ki's left hand, then you can choose it. Or you want to see the keyboard from the top. You can decide who's accompanying you from the band, if it's an e-bass player or a percussion player. You can increase the tempo, you can make it slower, you can practice within the loop mode, you can just jam around if you just want to be creative without being dedicated to the music in the app. You can use the music just to learn the piece. So at the end, we want people just to have fun with some of the best musicians. And the very, very important thing is it's pure music with real musicians making real music, without any technical or computer software support, but you really hear what musicians are capable of.
Amazing. Hyung-Ki, you've recorded all day to be part of My Groove. How was it? Tell me about the experience.
First of all, it's very humbling. Well, it's really humbling, actually, because in the recording session, there are some things which I'm really struggling with, and it's very simple things, actually. And it's probably a little bit like you having to explain how to speak your native language, because we can speak. I can speak English, you can speak English, German, but then if you actually had to teach someone how to do it, that's a whole other mindset. And so even though I was doing things with just one finger for the very beginner, it's challenging.
Maybe I can just add that he was so good today because we had some musicians and they are all really good, but he was so fast. And the cool thing is it's the perfect mix. Yeah, it's fantastic capabilities on the piano, but at the same time, didactical and methodical issues are so important, and he's so good on that. Yeah, people will just love to join and love to listen, and I'm absolutely convinced that this is also a main goal for us. You know, Florian, I'm sure we all remember that. Yeah, Parents tell us you have to practice now. And then we do practice because they promised us after we practiced for 30 minutes.
An ice cream.
We are ice cream, or we are allowed to play the PlayStation.
Right.
Yeah, what we really love. And I'm absolutely sure kids will just love to play this computer game, making music, playing in a band. And this is our goal after the pandemic, after such a difficult time. We need to push.
Question for both of you pros. When one wants to start to learn an instrument, what's essential? Do you have like tips, like how to, just how to progress quickly? Is it just like how often you practice, or what is it about?
Well, that's $1 million question in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's loads of pedagogical philosophies and well-proven scientific theories. I think it comes back to something that Martin spoke about at the beginning, which is passion. Somehow you have to ignite the passion. You have to, if it's a beginner, and usually beginners are of the younger generation, but not always. But you have to somehow spark that fire that will make this person want to go through the arduous task and challenge of learning something that they don't know anything about. And we all know, if we remember well, this frustration of learning something that we don't know how to do. But if you have that spark of curiosity and fire of passion, and you also have tangible rewards, in this case with my groove, I mean, you practice something simple for 6 notes, 4 notes even, with one finger. And then immediately you're playing with one of the greatest bands in the world, your 4 notes with one finger. I mean, that in itself is enough to make you thirsty to want to play the next 4 notes. And I don't know yet of anything like that, where the beginner, the baby, so to speak, can immediately be on the stage of Madison Square Garden. And that's what happens that's what happens with my groove, is that after the first 4 notes, you are already playing with the world's best musicians on the biggest stage.
I have one last question for you. If there's one instrument you'd like to learn, which one would it be? Maybe even with the MyGroove app.
You are not serious. It's clear what he would choose, right?
In getting prepared to record my sessions at MyGroove, I had the luck that this guy, Martin Grubinger, had already done a lot of his own things. So I watched them as research, as my homework. And actually, I have to say, I never thought I would say this, but it inspired me to get a drum kit and want to actually experience this, because he explains it so clearly and in such a fun way. And it actually makes me think, I can do this. This is not rocket science.
Yeah.
And I recently read a quote from Einstein just the other week, where he said something like, if you can't explain something as if you're explaining to a 5-year-old, then it means that you don't understand it yourself. And Martin has this incredible way of explaining things in such a easy way that it invites you like this, and it makes me think, okay, that's it. I want to get a drum kit. I want to do the Martin Grubinger My Groove thing. So I'm not just saying that because he's here. I really was inspired to learn about drums. I always thought drums would be just way too difficult, way too loud, and too many things going on at the same time. You know, your right foot and your left foot has to do something. I mean, I struggle already just with the piano, with just 2 hands doing something and 1 foot playing the pedal. But here you're constantly doing 5 against 3 against 4 against 2, and you got the kick drum here, and it's great. Just talking about it drives me nuts. But I think with the Grubinger Groove, My Groove app, I'd love to do that. Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Hyung-Ki, for coming. And you know what? You download the app, and in 2 years you'll be back as a drum instructor. How about that?
Yes, now that's a challenge.
That would be so cool. I would love to see this.
Thank you very much, and wish you all the best, und vielen Dank dafür, dass du als Gast bei uns hier warst.
Herzlichen Dank.
Danke, Yuki.
Tschüss, Martin. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, Florian.
Das war der MyGroove Podcast, produziert von The Red Bulletin, dem Magazin Abseits des Alltäglichen. Wenn du Lust bekommen hast, selbst mitzugrooven, dann hol dir MyGroove im App Store oder auf Google Play.
Über eine positive Bewertung des Podcasts freuen der Florian und ich uns natürlich. Und noch mehr, wenn du uns weiterempfehlst.